Operation Meghdoot was the code name for the Indian Armed Forces operation to capture the Siachen Glacier in the disputed Kashmir region, precipitating the Siachen conflict. Launched on 13 April 1984, this military operation was unique as the first assault launched in the world's highest battlefield. The military action resulted in Indian troops gaining control of the entire Siachen Glacier. Today, the Indian Army deployment to forward positions along what is known as the actual ground position line is also sometimes inaccurately referred to as Operation Meghdoot. Up to 10 infantry battalions each of the Indian Army and Pakistani Army are actively deployed in altitudes up to 6,400 meters. Cause of conflict: the Siachen Glacier became a bone of contention following a vague demarcation of territory as per the similar agreement of 1972, which did not exactly specify who had authority over the Siachen Glacier area. Indian interpretation was that Pakistan territory extended only to about the Saltoro Ridge based on the similar agreement where the territorial lines route after the last demarcated point 10J9842 was thence north to the glaciers. Pakistan interpretation was that their territory continued northeast from point 10J9842 to the Karakoram Pass. As a result, both nations claimed the barren heights and the Siachen Glacier. In the 1970s and early 80s, Pakistan permitted several mountaineering expeditions to climb the peaks in the Siachen region from the Pakistani side, perhaps in an attempt to reinforce their claim on the area, as these expeditions received permits obtained from the government of Pakistan and in many cases a liaison officer from the Pakistan Army accompanied the teams. In 1978, the Indian Army also allowed mountaineering expeditions to the glacier, approaching from its side. The most notable one was the one launched by Colonel Narinder Bull Kumar of the Indian Army, who led an expedition to Terim Kangri, along with medical officer Captain A.V.S. Gupta. The Indian Air Force provided valuable support to this expedition in 1978 through logistic support and supply of fresh rations. The first air landing on the glacier was carried out on 6 October 1978 when 2 casualties were evacuated from the advance base camp in Chetik. Helicopter by Squadron LDR Monga and Flying Officer Man Mohan Bahadur. Contention over the glacier was aggravated by these expeditions, through both sides asserting their claims. Notably, when Pakistan gave permission to a Japanese expedition to scale an important peak in 1984, it further fueled the suspicion of the Indian government of Pakistani attempts to legitimize their claim. The peak, located east of the Siachen Glacier, also overlooks the northwestern areas of the Aksai-Chin area, which is occupied by China, but claimed by India. The Indian military believed that such an expedition could further a link for a trade route from the northeastern to the southwestern side of the Karakoram Range and eventually provide a strategic, if not tactical, advantage to the Pakistani armed forces. The operation. In 1983, Pakistani generals decided to stake their claim through troop deployments to the Siachen Glacier. After analyzing the Indian Army's mountaineering expeditions, they feared that India might capture key ridges and passes near the glacier, and decided to send their own troops first. Islamabad ordered Arctic weather gear from a London supplier, unaware that the same supplier provided outfits to the Indians. The Indians were informed about this development and initiated their own plan, providing them with a head start. Having received intelligence inputs about planned Pakistani action in the area, India decided to prevent Pakistan from legitimizing its claim on the glacier and eventually stop future expeditions to the glacier from the Pakistani side. Accordingly, the Indian military decided to deploy troops from northern Ladakh region as well as some paramilitary forces to the glacier area. Most of the troops had been acclimatized to the extremities of the glacier through a training expedition to Antarctica in 1982. The Indian Army planned an operation to occupy the glacier by the 13th of April 1984, to preempt the Pakistani army by about 4 days, as intelligence had reported that the Pakistani operation planned to occupy the glacier by the 17th of April. Named for the divine cloud messenger, Meghdoot, from the 4th century AD Sanskrit play by Kalidasar. Operation Meghdoot was led by Lieutenant General Premnath Hoon, the then general officer commanding the 15 Corps in Srinagar, Jammu and Kashmir. Preparations for Operation Meghdoot started with the airlift of Indian Army soldiers by the Indian Air Force. The IAF used Il-76 and 12 and N-32 to transport stores and troops as well to airdrop supplies to high-altitude airfields. From there Mi-17, Mi-8 and Hal-Chetak helicopters carried provisions and personnel to the east of the hitherto unscaled peaks. The first phase of the operation began in March 1984 with the march on foot to the eastern base of the glacier. A full battalion of the Kumaon Regiment and units from the Ladakh Scouts marched with full battle packs through an ice-bound Zojila Pass for days. The units under the command of Lieutenant Colonel D.K. Khanna were moved on foot to avoid detection of large troop movements by Pakistani radars. The first unit to establish position on the heights of the glacier was led by Major R.S. Sandhu. The next unit, led by Captain Sanjay Kilkarni, secured Bilafondla. The remaining forward deployment units then marched and climbed for 4 days under the command of Captain P.V. Yadav to secure the remaining heights of the Saltoro Ridge. By April 13, approximately 300 Indian troops were dug into the critical peaks and passes of the glacier. By the time Pakistan troops managed to get into the immediate area, they found that the Indian troops had occupied all 3 major mountain passes of Sialar, Bilafondla, and by 1987 Jayongla and all the commanding heights of the Saltoro Ridge west of Siachen Glacier. Handicapped by the altitude and the limited time, Pakistan could only manage to control the Saltoro Ridge's western slopes and foothills, despite the fact that Pakistan possessed more ground-accessible routes to the area. Unlike Indian access, which was largely reliant on airdrops for supplies due to the steeper eastern side of the glacier. In his memoirs, former Pakistani President, General Pervez Musharraf states that Pakistan lost almost 900 square miles of territory. Time magazine states that the Indian advance captured nearly 1,000 square miles of territory claimed by Pakistan. Camps were soon converted to permanent posts by both countries. The number of casualties on both sides during this particular operation is not known. Aftermath. There are divergent views on the strategic value of the operation. Some view it as a futile capture of non-strategic land which antagonized relations between India and Pakistan. Others consider the operation to be a daring success by the Indian military and ensured that the Indian military held tactical high ground on the strategic Saltoro Ridge just west of the glacier, albeit at a high cost. The Indian Army currently controls all of the 70 km long Siachen Glacier and all of its tributary glaciers, as well as the 3 main passes of the Saltoro Ridge immediately west of the glacier, Sialar, Bilafondla, and Jayongla, thus holding on to the tactical advantage of high ground. The operation and the continued cost of maintaining logistics to the area is a major drain on both militaries. Pakistan launched an all-out assault in 1987 and again in 1989 to capture the ridge and passes held by India. Later the same year, Pakistan lost at least one major Pakistani post, the Quaid, which came under Indian control as Banner Post, in recognition of Banner Singh, who launched the daring daylight attack, codenamed Operation Rajiv, after climbing 1,500 feet of ice cliff. Banner Singh was awarded the Param Vir Chakra, the highest gallantry award of India, for the assault that captured the post. Banner Post is the highest battlefield post in the world today at a height of 22,143 feet above sea level. The second assault in 1989 was also unsuccessful as the ground positions did not change. The loss of most of the Siachen area and the subsequent unsuccessful military forays prompted Benazir Bhutto to taunt Zia-ul-Haq that he should wear a burqa as he had lost his manliness. Operation Meghdoot was seen by some as the blueprint behind the Kargil War in 1999, when Pakistani paramilitary forces covertly occupied the Kargil region. Some obvious similarities exist between Siachen and Kargil, including their preemptive nature and the tactical advantage held by the entity who holds the heights. But while Operation Meghdoot was launched in an area of ambiguous border demarcation, the line of control in the Kargil region is clearly demarcated, and therefore India received complete international support during the Kargil episode. Casualties: no reliable data is available. However, both sides incurred most of their casualties from the weather and the terrain. A large number of soldiers from both sides suffered frostbite and high-altitude sickness or were lost in avalanches or crevasses during patrols.